Why start now?
Yeah, pretty much. Starting out the show great with a burp right in the mic. Anyways, hello and welcome to the Part-Time Gamers, the gaming podcast for people with full-time lives. I'm Cyranex, clocking in with my good friend, That One Weirdo.
Yes, I'm here, and you know what that means. It's time for me to crap on Ubisoft.
That's pretty easy to do right now. Oh, yeah.
And I had my Metamucil today, so...
Yeah, September is out today. Her birthday was 2 days ago, so if you are connected to her in some way, wish her happy birthday if you haven't already. Yeah, she's well celebrated this weekend and needed just another day. So
why did you use euphemistic language? She's hungover. If you call her to
I
wish her
was
happy
trying
birthday,
to be delicate.
Get on speaker and sound like Bon Scott from AC/DC back in the day. Ah!
Yeah,
happy birthday, and then click.
Yeah, the phrase that she uses, she has been over celebrated this weekend. So
over celebrated. So she's Nickelback.
except we actually want her around.
True story. True story.
Yeah. All right. Anyways, yeah, she's going to be out for today. But yeah, let's go ahead. You still got us, and hopefully that's good enough. We'll just
way to be
that.
Confident. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, well, let's put anyway. Water cooler.
Was that a sentence?
No, it wasn't. I'm pretty sure those weren't even words. Anyways, let's go into our water cooler talk.
You get that thing I sent you?
All right, let's get the shitting out Ubisoft over with.
Ooh, yeah, that sound, that wasn't actually a water cooler. That was literally the sound my stomach makes when somebody's like, "Hey, you want to play Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League?" I'm like, No, I'd rather have a root canal surgery done by Stevie Wonder. Thank you. So,
yeah, and somehow
another day.
Yeah.
Another day, another show, another Ubisoft article of Ubisoft doing Ubisoft things.
Yeah.
So, as those may know, they have released a Star Wars Outlaws to very lukewarm, if not tepid reception. So much so that the shares have dropped once again for them. Just off the release alone, it's like a drop of like 5.5%, 5.5%, as the article may cover. Now, why this is significant, and it's not just the fact that this company is, having issues about where to kind of find, their footing again. They go big. They used to go big and pull it off and know what gamers wanted. And now, you get a pirate game that took like a decade, and then it was like, oh, so you completed it.
Yeah.
And Star Wars Outlaws, they really doubled down because Assassin's Creed was also lukewarm. And this one's pretty significant because this kind of blow now marks to where the stock value has actually dropped. Now they're looking at 30% as a whole over just the year. So we've talked about them being in trouble before.
Yeah.
But, to make a kind of glib joke, if you will, to, skull and bones, they're in a sinking ship, if you will. And a lot of it just has to do with, they used to be the barometer for the market in so many ways. And you look back, and I know I've gone on this before, but obviously you got to look at the past, look at now and the future. They used to really know what people wanted, and they doubled down on certain things like NFTs. That was kind of like a FOMO situation. Yeah. That eye roll encapsulates not just Ubisoft's investment in NFTs, but NFTs as a whole.
Yeah, actually, if you indulge me for 1 second, I have a story related to that. So there was a game that I was a real big fan of. It was a free-to-play shooter that had a really strong PvE mode called Shadowline. Played it for, it was in early access for a long time. I think it might actually be out in full release now. But so I was really excited out. They're making really good changes. They announced a release date and everything. And then like a month or two before the release date, they said, yeah, we're teaming up with this publisher that, basically they're adding NFT crypto bro bullshit to the game. And it's like, all right, I'm out. I got other games I can play. I got Helldivers. I got a bunch of other stuff I can do. I'm out. Uninstalled, never installed again. It's like, nobody wants that in our game. And the people who do, you do not want to associate with. So,
Yep.
Anyway, continue.
True story. And once again, they used to be the tip of the spear. Like I used to get excited for their games, and it kind of makes you stand back and look like, what is going on with these guys? And a couple things is they've made poor investments, NFTs. They, like many, gaming companies, these corporations have started laying people off because now they're on the back end of, well, the other entertainment exists, not related to the pandemic, because the pandemic is technically over for all intents and purposes. And basically now we're at a point where people are going to do other stuff. So, we had talked about that a little bit as far as that high art when that was going on with the, gaming making money hand over fist. And that was in the wake of the pandemic. But you know what? Good for them. But then it was like, so when does the other side fall? Because even before that, they were making money, but as per usual, they got to compete with everybody else. So now we're kind of back to that, but now we're back to these big titles, these big companies that are just underachieving. And a lot of it is lack of innovation. A lot of it is autopiloting. I mean, I'm looking forward to getting a little workout with Outlaws, but from what little I've messed with it, you've been there, you done that, you got the lightsaber and the t-shirt. It's not like they were really swinging for the fences. Not the way, LucasArts games used to do, which was, God, miss them so much.
I mean, there's a lot, like, I do think this is an important article, but there is a lot that behind this whole thing, behind Ubisoft right now with Outlaw, with also another game that's one of theirs that's in trouble right now is XDefiant.
So I was excited about.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know Skull and Bones actually released. So.
You and everybody else.
Yeah, reading this article and seeing that it was released on February 13th of this year, I was like, didn't even know. But that's also I'm not really part of that demographic. But I mean, there's no other way of saying it other than just some boneheaded decisions. And they're not the only ones that have made these same decisions, but, in particular, I want to do a bit of a discussion about early access for these kind of AAA titles. Because, so two companies roughly at the same time did an early access for their new release. Ubisoft with Star Wars Outlaws and Blizzard with The War Within. They both did a short period of early access that you could buy into. And also, when you buy those versions, it gave you more than the early access. It gave you a bunch of in-game stuff, like with the War Within, World of Warcraft, by the way, War Within. They also gave you game time. They gave you in-game currency and pets and stuff like that. They did something similar with Outlaws. They gave you like some cosmetics and stuff like that, but they also gave you that early access period. And where Star Wars Outlaws really shit the bed was like they did not test this enough. It's like, if you're going to do an early access, it should be solid for that early access. You should not be using that for a testing period. Like in this context, because then that's another thing, like the phrase early access, we've gotten so used to that phrase being about like indies, quote unquote, releasing a game 2 years before its official release, so that because it's still in development.
Right.
This is not that context. This is actually probably a more accurate way of using that phrase early access, because it's supposed to be a full game that you get to play, that you bought time into to play for extra time, for a couple days. But yeah, the whole fiasco with Outlaws is like, okay, you have these people who spent like literally over $100 for a version of the game, which I think is absurd in itself, for an extra 3
Especially
days.
these days.
Yeah, for like an extra 3 days of gameplay. It's a janky mess. There's videos of, there's this one video in particular, this guy is trying to compliment the game. He's saying, it's like, yeah, this game looks really good. And he's using the speeder bike, goes over a rock, and then falls through the earth. And immediately dies. He just hangs his head down and goes, never mind.
Yep.
It's like, it's a janky mess. It's, like there's things that need to be improved that should have been done before the early access to begin with, because you have these people paying so much extra money for it. And their fix is day one of the normal access. They release a patch and say, hey, all you people who did that early access time, yeah, you got to restart your game. Yep. So like, basically, like, your game is completely irrelevant at this point. So all that early access time that you got is just a preview. It's just a preview of what, like, how a broken experience. So it's like,
yep.
If we knew that this was going to happen, nobody would have gotten the early access. It's like, even with the early access for The War Within, I didn't buy it. I don't feel like I wasted my time. Like, I got it with the normal access time, because even if I had bought it, I wouldn't have had time to play it. It's like,
right.
And this is just me. There are people who are able to know life these kinds of things, where, the extra 3 days they would have been able to level up an additional character or two in that time frame before the season begins. But even so, it's like the first season doesn't even begin until this Tuesday, and it's already been like 2 weeks. So I already have 2 level 80s, and I'm getting have completed the current campaign, doing delves and like quote unquote late game stuff now. And the first season hasn't even started yet. And I did not buy the extra 3 days. It's like, all the cosmetics, I don't care about. The extra game time, I don't care about. I just pay my normal, I have it budgeted out that I can afford this. And it's like, just the idea of early access for these kinds of games, to me, is kind of just asinine.
Agreed.
Yeah. Especially since I do think part of it is what we associate that phrase with. Like, the fact that it's supposed to be, when we say an early access game right now, usually you're referring to a game that's in development. That is, like, they allow players to buy the game there so that they can get a lot of, it's like the PTR for World of Warcraft. You get a bunch more people playing the game. You get a lot more eyes on it, and they can find more mistakes, and in enough time for you to fix them. And I mean, that's the entire point, is the more you open it up, the more eyes you're able to get on the product, the more likely you are to fix these mistakes before a final release. That's not what they did. That's not what, even though technically early access for what the context they used it was more accurate, that's not what we associate with anymore. And that shouldn't have been a development period. That should have been this game is complete, more or less bug free, or at least bugs that aren't going to make you have to restart your game. Yeah. So, yeah. And just Star Wars in general right now is kind of in a rut.
Yeah.
Like with the cancellation of Acolyte, which I'm going to have to rewatch, because I don't think it was, I enjoyed Acolyte, but
right.
Granted, I was watching it as a second screen experience. So a lot of the details that people are referencing, I might have missed. I don't know. I thought it was a lot better than people are saying it is, but apparently people hate Star Wars right now. So whatever.
Well, I think people are, especially in the case of Star Wars, they're trying to hang on to something that isn't there anymore. So as far as the Acolyte, for me, I didn't finish it, and it wasn't because I hated it, and it wasn't because I wanted to watch it in a certain way, because I enjoyed it. I think the reason why Star Wars is in kind of a rut is because it feels like it's in a rut. When you look at some of these stories, some of which are retcon and some of which are going forward, but then want one foot in the past. And if you really want to get a real handle on what Star Wars should be, I highly suggest a show called Andor, which is a prequel series to Rogue One. And that is done in such a way that it actually encapsulates the world of Star Wars. And you don't deal with Skywalkers, you don't deal with lightsabers, you don't deal with the Force. Because with a world that's so developed as much as it is, and not just by Lucas, Filoni, Favreau, all the people who've had a hand in it, like, and even Timothy Zahn, back in the day, his novels, which are absolutely wonderful. You don't have to keep with the same beating drum. And part of the big issue I currently have with Star Wars is they think they know what the audience wants, but they also have this ideal of like, well, it says Star Wars. You either like it or not. And it's like, well, no, we're allowed to form opinions, and not just because we're passionate, which turns into obviously what could be toxic fandom. But I think it's important that the fans are at least understood. Now, granted, fans that throw out death threats and the barbs that they throw out online, that's unacceptable. That is literally a case of like, you shut down conversation for a reason. And then it's like, well, they won't hear me out and they call me toxic. And it's like, well, you get what you give.
Yeah.
But you also have to remember they're the ones that kind of hold the thing. So for me, when it comes to the Acolyte, I had an ideal of where they were going, but it's a lot of retconning that feels more like fan fiction that doesn't actually apply to anything. And for me, especially with the Acolyte, I just didn't I didn't have a stake in it.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff is very visually good. I didn't really care much about the characters because they didn't develop them.
Yeah, I mean, it had its moments that were exceptional. Like since pretty much no one's going to watch it from now on anyway, I might as well spoil this part anyways. But like my favorite part, headbutting a freaking lightsaber, freaking badass. That whole episode, which was very action heavy, very lightsaber centric and everything, was fantastic. And also I'm always fascinated when you have characters that are otherwise big, like they're named characters. They should have a story to them and everything. And they just get horribly murdered. Like all of them.
Yeah.
I get fascinated by that. I don't know why. I probably shouldn't be, but whatever. But it has its moments and I can see some of the flaws, but also I'm not a super hardcore Star Wars fan. I haven't read any of the books, so I don't know any of that lore. Basically, the only things I've seen or have been knowledgeable of are the movies and TV shows. That's the only references I have. But in reference to, you were talking about Andor and why that one is so much better than the Acolyte, even though I still think it has its own issues in its storytelling. But one thing that made Marvel very successful is they didn't they weren't making superhero movies. They were making a genre film that just happened to have superheroes in it.
Right.
So I think one of the reasons why Andor works so well is because it's not a Star Wars series. It's an espionage story set in the Star Wars universe. And
a very good one.
Yeah. I will admit, just like the tension that they have, that they create in that show is very good. So I will admit
I had two
that part.
pucker moments, and I had that moment, and I was just sitting chilling in what I call my butt divot in my couch, because literally there's a point where the two things meet, and when I lay down, my butt goes, so it goes bloop. So I literally have, I kid you not, I have a butt divot. But I was sitting there, and it was the first time in like a long time, especially with Star Wars, where I sat up and I had a pucker moment where I was like, oh, we get intense up in here. And a lot of it is because I think, and I think you hit it right on the head. They look at the story. The Gilroy brothers are amazing filmmakers and creators. They've been for many years, but they look at creating they look at creating what they're doing of within the story, and then know how to kind of inhabit the world around it. I think, my 2 cents, I think a lot of what's happening now is the other way. And you can, people obviously have their takes on what they're doing. But my big hang up is just the fact that, a lot of this stuff feels so directionless. Like,
Yeah.
even some of these series that are supposed to be pretty set to episodes, you look at the trajectory and it's like, wait, where are we? Why are they? And a lot of it is just what they throw at it. And in between, it's like, okay, well, we'll get a story. And it's like, well, no, arcs mean a thing.
Yeah.
And canon can be changed or altered, but you have to kind of know where you're going, I think, beforehand. Because, a lot of movies, we learn things, especially in the third movie, that kind of brings it full circle. And we go, oh, okay, we didn't realize, this was a thing. They connect things after the fact that may or may not work, because let's be honest, I love the original trilogy as much as anybody else, but space is really big. What are the odds Luke was going to run into his own sister and kiss her?
Yeah. Well, that, and it's like, or even if you really want to get into like the light speed travel, there was a series on YouTube. Oh, I forgot what it was. It was a science-based series on YouTube, or channel on YouTube, where they actually calculated out if you took like every planet and every star in the galaxy and like increased their mass by 10 times, increased their size by 10 times, you could travel, I think they estimated around like 2.5 times across the entire galaxy before even possibly running into anything if you just picked a random direction. There's that much space in space.
Right.
So, but anyway,
Yeah.
tangent. We're just, water cooler talk is tangent talk apparently today.
A little bit.
But yeah.
No, I think with Ubisoft, I think they need to kind of look at their center, and I think a lot of game companies are kind of running into that now. Warner Brothers, who of course I had to throw in there, having nothing to do with Ubisoft, but they're now looking at what they're going to do next, because they've taken a lot of beating recently with some of their lackluster games. And I think you really also hit it on the head with this early access because it's funny how these companies want to create a hype train and then don't know how to run it and then derail it at the same time. Because Suicide Squad ran into something similar where, you had some early access, but it wasn't a lot of time. And they were like packaging something before they even knew what they had, because they had that special edition, which was like $140. And I'm like, and we were already getting into just a small, yet pretty intricate reviews about no, there's no framing for this. The gameplay is terrible. The characters are like hideous, and they have a great playbook from something like DC that has had so many great creators and artists and writers. And it's like, you gave us this? It's worse than that Avengers game. And I thought that Avengers game was like that was a crime against humanity. And then,
well, we'll get into another one coming up.
Okay. But I remember with Suicide Squad, I literally was like, sometimes there's proof that there may be no God. This has been one of those times.
Yeah. But to segue that into my article, which, so if you heard about this game called Concord, you can't play it anymore.
I almost did an article.
Oh, this is abysmal. Okay. So for people unfamiliar, Concord was intended to be a hero shooter to rival Overwatch. It was made by Firewalk Studios, published by PlayStation, and if you wanted to play it, you can't anymore. The game was released August 23rd, so only a couple weeks ago, and as of September 6th, as of this Friday, the servers are shut down You can no longer play this game at all.
Bye.
So if you were one of so this is probably one of the worst releases for a game in at least recent memory. The all-time peak concurrent player count on Steam was 697.
Oh.
Not even breaking 700 on Steam. For their all-time concurrent players. There was, I think they said there was 12,000 copies sold or something like that.
Right.
Which is abysmally terrible. And this is for a $40 game. So
Yes.
it's like...
They spent millions developing.
Yeah, they estimate that it was $100 million and 8 years of development to make this game. And it was shut down in 2 weeks.
Times like this, Ubisoft looks across, Culver City and points and goes, ha ha.
Yeah, shortly before they say, hold my beer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So let's put it this way for a little bit of context. You remember the previous, ridiculously terrible game that was released, Redfall? You can still play that.
Yes.
Can't play this anymore. But yeah, just the fact that this was kind of a big story this past week and was discussed on the Core podcast this past week as well. And to kind of convey a little bit of their conversation as well. This is why big companies, big publishers and such should not be chasing trends. If you're a small indie studio and you can pivot on something in a week, yeah, chase trends. Try to get that trend and everything. Like if this was an independent studio, there's and they were trying to make this 8 years, release it 8 years ago, then yeah, it could have been feasible. But when you're a big company like this, big publisher like PlayStation, and you're trying to chase a trend like Overwatch, and it takes you 8 years to do it, the trend's pretty much over. Overwatch has been around and dominant for so long, and has been even now, it's still a ridiculously popular game. And there's, there have been a lot of hero shooters in the same vein as Overwatch that have come and gone long before this one was, so I'm honestly not surprised. Even it wasn't very well advertised. I think we saw they had a trailer for it on one of the games awards, one of Jeff Keighley's things. I think is where I first saw anything about it. And it was just it wasn't even a gameplay trailer. It was just a rendered trailer for it. And none of the characters are memorable. No one, we have no attachment to any of these characters, so we don't have that.
Right.
It's there was nothing really about this game that really set it apart. And again, even if they released this 8 years ago, it probably still wouldn't have been as even a whole lot more successful, because by that point the trend was already on the way.
Oh, absolutely.
But
and especially Overwatch being so dominant.
Yeah.
Other ones have come out, but even after all this time that Overwatch has been out, nobody's knocked it off that pedestal.
Yeah.
So if you create something that's going to go toe to toe, and you want to get in on that cake, you kind of have to position yourself, and that goes with marketing, and that goes with comparables, and that goes with getting engagement. This almost feels similar to the Stadia, where it's I remember wanting to buy it, and it's well, is this thing even out yet? And it was wait, this thing's been out for a year.
Yeah.
I know some companies or some even gaming consoles or gaming options, they don't necessarily expect to have the biggest dog in the fight. However, they expect at least to have some kind of seat at the table. And in the case of this game, you check it out. I got to check it out very briefly. I was actually thinking about doing that this weekend, but I've been sick as a dog, and now I can't get to it.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things. It's if you want me to care about this, and you want me to associate it with something that's already kind of made their bones, but you're taking them on, but you're actually punching above your weight class, you got to get the people invested. And you have, like you even said, there's other games of this type that are still around. Yeah, they may not be at Overwatch's level, but they're still there. They're still
they're
prevalent. They've
around.
got the following. And it's like, well, especially when the trend is after the fact and so many people are in front of it, it's automatically an uphill battle, and you got to actually work for it. And it feels like right here, Sony just, they missed the mark. They definitely misread the market, as well as what this would bear in way of just, oh, we would, we want this. Oh, well, do they want this?
Yeah.
Okay, it's got to go both ways, because once again, you can throw money at something, but if you don't know how to speak to your audience or connect to them, even with something that you're like, not only did I spend a lot of money on, but I think we can take the champ. Nobody's going to give a rat's patoot.
Yeah, I mean,
For what little I got to mess with it, I liked it. I know where they were going. I was excited to see what might happen, but it didn't.
Yeah,
didn't knock me down.
I mean, that's the thing is, like, the
take my breath away.
gameplay. The gameplay itself is not necessarily a bad game. It's just it doesn't innovate on anything.
Nope.
The characters are not like the characters are all over the place. If it's $40 to even get into it, which, I know we have some misgivings for free to play, but at the same time, it's like, if you want people to get into your game, that's the easiest way to do it. The reason that system exists is because it works. And Overwatch 2 is currently free to play. So, but yeah, if you're doing too much of the same stuff, there's a couple games out there now that are kind of taking on the hero shooter genre, and but they're doing it in a different way, and I think they have a lot of success in front of them. One is one that's actually, it's by Valve, called Deathlock.
Okay,
And
heard of it.
yeah, it's like I watched some of Bo Schwartz playing it, and it looks pretty good, actually. It has a lot of the Overwatch like characters, that kind of feel with the different characters, but it's actually more of a MOBA than a hero shooter. Because even though it's third person shooter perspective and gameplay and stuff like that, you're pushing down lanes, you're capturing creatures, you're gathering experience, which in this case is souls and everything like that. You're leveling up abilities. It plays much more like a MOBA, even though it functions a lot like a hero shooter in the micro. Another one that I think actually has the possibility of being very successful is Marvel Rivals. But the big reason why, even though it's very much, it looks very similar in gameplay to a lot of Overwatch elements. I think it's going to be very objective based and such, like Overwatch is. The fact that it's Marvel, the fact that it has these major Marvel characters that we know and love now, is a big selling point. We automatically have a connection to these characters. I want to get in there. I want to play War Machine. I want to play Iron Man. I want to play these characters, see how they work. Like Iron Man, from the gameplay footage they were showing, is always airborne. There's you can just always be in the air. It feels like, the fact that you can combine character abilities together to make it more powerful ability really, really separates it from Overwatch as well. I think that's going to be the one that has the best success in this genre versus Overwatch. I still don't think it's going to overtake it. Overwatch
is just too big.
It's just too ingrained right now, but it's going to be successful. So, but I just am both not surprised and just
flabbergasted.
Yeah, somewhat amused by how quickly this game was shut down. Because it's another one I didn't even know it was released. It's like I didn't know, and and then already there's a couple Twitch clips already of people who were on the game as the servers were shut down, as this big final moment. And it just tells you, it gives you this error that there's a game mismatch. It boots you back to the main menu, and it's if you try to go back in, it just says something went wrong, which is can be taken in a lot of different
Putting it
ways.
mildly,
Yeah.
yes.
So, but yeah, I thought it was interesting how that was shut down so quickly. And it's like, it's like just throwing money at it is not going to fix it. Throwing a development time is not going to fix the problem. If like, it seems like this game was just doomed from the start, 8 years ago, 8 years, $100 million
That's insane.
and shut down in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's insane. And
Yeah.
you can't help but to look at that and just go, like, yeah, the initial reception is pretty bad, but to just kind of abandon it as a whole, because, and we've talked about this game before, and it definitely deserves some kudos now, because when it came out, and it was during a time where we all needed something positive to look forward to, and, you know, Cyberpunk 2077 was one of those games where, you know, they had pushed it so much. There was so much that looked like it was going to go right. You had Keanu Reeves, so I'm in. But when it finally got to like, okay, let's fire this baby up, it all felt lacking. But we all kind of like, you know, some people kind of took it with a grain of salt. Some, you know, companies were like, okay, we'll just give you a refund. But what I give them credit for was like, I think somewhere in between, just my optics, my prognosis, is they figured out how to listen. Like, yeah, we did our best, but we hear you as well. And I think that gets very tricky, because when that happens, companies have to do one thing in a lot of cases they hate doing, which is admit they're wrong.
Yeah.
They hate that a lot. But I think it shows that they care about what they made as much as what people purchased. And Cyberpunk now is pretty on point.
Yeah.
It's taken some time. It's taken a little growing pains in TLC, along with DLCs, but it's
I mean, yeah,
it's got there.
Yeah, if the game released in the state that it is now, it would have been game of the year hands down, easily that year. You know,
Yep.
It's like I never refunded it when I don't remember if I pre-ordered it or anything like that. I still have it on my Steam account. I still can play it. I was waiting for a couple mods to update, actually, because one thing that I know, it's the whole trope of the RPG genre in general, but I hate like increasing health, and it's like how you make a target more difficult by just making it a bullet sponge. So
Right.
there's a mod that I found where basically everyone just has like a flat 100 health. Like, it doesn't matter what your level is or anything like that. Just your health is 100. You can increase your armor and become more resistant to damage and things like that. But you get a shotgun to the face, you're gonna die, regardless.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Bye.
kind of how I want to play it. So now that I think they have like officially stopped doing content patches for it. I think.
Okay.
So now that there's not going to be any more content patches and everything like that, I feel safe to be able to download the final version of this mod and be able to play it again. But that's one that I've been wanting to get back into. Oh, and I still have it. So
they did good.
Yeah, they're one of the few stories of a company that actually admits their mistakes and tries to fix it and does it well.
Know how to turn it around.
Yeah. I mean, the other big
But
story.
not Sony.
Yeah, Sony. No, they shoot themselves constantly, and they're just like, okay, we still have room for holes in our feet, so let's keep going. But like another company that did that and was successful was Hello Games with No Man's Sky. You know, and they're still doing it. I mean, they're like, they just announced another free update that's supposed to be coming out like I think this week. And it's like where they add like fishing and stuff like that to all the water worlds. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like, please let us give you money. You've already gotten the goodwill back. We want to make sure you can make more of this good stuff. So it's like, yeah. Anyway,
It's like, we're here, guys.
Yeah. But yeah. Anyway, continuing on. I think we've covered quite a bit in our water cooler talk today. Before we get back to work, I'd want to mention our Patreon. patreon.com/ptgcast. If you like what you hear and you would like to help us out with a little bit of money each month, we'd really appreciate it. You can help with our paychecks there. $1, $5, $10 all helps out. We really do appreciate it at patreon.com/ptgcast. And with that, let's go ahead and get back to work.
Morning break is over. Morning break is over.
So this month we're going to be talking about VR games because I might have mentioned it in one of our shows, but this past summer picnic for my company I work at, I won a Quest 2 during the raffle they had there. So been getting back into some of the VR games I've had for a while, and we're going to talk about a couple of them this month. This week we're going to be talking about The Lab, which kind of an interesting one. It's so I refer to this month's theme as VR Essentials because they're kind of the games that kind of came out and were like the kind of the tech demo type stuff for VR when it originally came out. So this one was released in 2016 and came out about a month after the original Rift was released to the public. And so developed and published by Valve. It is actually free. It's a completely free experience on Steam.
Been around for a minute.
Yeah. This came out 2016, right after the original Rift was released to the public, and it's less of a game, and it's more of a showcase of what VR can do in several different ways. So there's 8 different First of all, I love the aesthetic of this. It really plays on the sim. It's all Aperture Science. So if you're familiar with Portal and stuff, those kinds of games, it has very much the same kind of humor to it, the same kind of aesthetics and everything. Like the lab itself, they refer to it as Pocket Dimension 8, where it's just filled with those blocky stick figure guys just going around doing their jobs, and you can go around to different sections of this area and go to one of there's 8 different things different activities or experiences you can have in this place. A lot of which are 5 of them are more experiences. They're less games. You have postcards where you can go be able to go to different areas of the world. They have 4 different locations you can go to. Excuse me. 4 different locations around the world that you can go to, and it just gives you a VR representation of those worlds. And they actually look pretty detailed. They have pretty good scans of them. And for a bunch of them, they also have these little sticks that you can grab and everything and throw around, because there's a little robot dog, quote unquote, that'll go around and pick the sticks up and fetch them for you and everything like that. It's just a little random thing to showcase what kind of stuff VR can do. Again, they're actually pretty detailed. I mean, if you put your face really close to the textures, you can see a little bit of oddities, but for the most part, it's actually really detailed.
Yes.
And it's actually kind of cool. Like one of them is it's actually a lava tube. It's this cave that you can go into that, it has these, you can see the rain coming down through these holes in the top of the cave and everything. It's really detailed, and it's really actually kind of cool to experience. Another one is a VR representation of the solar system, which I'm pretty sure is not to scale at all, because I'm pretty sure if it was to scale, Neptune would be about 2.5 miles that way. So it might be not necessarily to scale, but it says represent. Also, the sun is huge. The sun is bigger than you are in this thing, which is, I'm sure, not accurate, because the Earth is maybe about 1/2 foot away from the sun, and it's about this big. Not quite to scale, but still a really interesting representation of the solar system. You got the sun in the middle, obviously, and you'll see these circles represent the orbits of the different planets and everything like that. You can actually go to the planets, pick them up, and just look at them. And if you're malicious, inevitably everyone is, you can throw them into the sun, and they just into the sun.
Oh yeah, of course somebody's going to have to do that at some point.
I mean, I think eventually it just devolves into that, regardless of who you are, how good natured you are. Like I immediately went over to Jupiter and was like, let's see how far I can throw this.
You'll
And
have
just
that
threw it on-
superhero moment where it's like, I've, phenomenal cosmic power. I'm gonna tear something
yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like another just representation of like what kind of stuff you can do with VR. One that I thought was actually pretty interesting, which I was not familiar with at first, was the secret shop. It puts you inside of, it's actually the shop from Dota 2, which is another Valve property. If you're unfamiliar, it's a very, very popular, kind of like one of the three big MOBAs out there right now. And it actually puts you inside the shop where you get your magic items and everything like that from the game. And you're supposed to be able to interact with the different items and stuff like that. It gives you just a sense of scale of, it's really, it's difficult to, like, I took a recorded the footage I had that I played through this for September and Theo. And it's a little bit difficult to give a sense of scale in 2D, like, because like, I don't know, it's just like in the secret shop, there's this little creature like that kind of sits behind you, and it's like this weird little mini dragon dog creature, and it's like I don't know where I'm going with this anyway, but
Right.
it's just like it's difficult to kind of convey scale when you're just watching this video 2D, but it's pretty phenomenal, the kind of stuff that you see when it's in 3D, just being able to go out and grab it and everything, all that jazz. But that's less about this and more about just VR in general. But this is one of those experiences that conveys that. It's like one of the kind of capabilities of VR. There's a medical scan, which I didn't spend a whole lot of time in because, frankly, it creeped me out a little bit.
It's a little.
It's like, especially when I moved weird and like accidentally pressed on something and all of a sudden just a giant torso shows up. I just like jump scared myself in this thing.
Yeah.
But it's again, it's another representation of what you can do in VR. It has compiled a bunch of CT scans of the human body, and you can actually you can select like the head or torso or something like that. You can peel layers virtually off of whatever it is and see like how the body works in VR, which can be kind of cool. The one that's probably the least interactive, I guess, is Robot Repair. It's actually described as an interactive comedy sketch, less than a game or anything like that. Which it's again
not far off.
Yeah, I mean that's basically what it's pretty accurate, because you're in this little repair bay and you have to repair one of the robots from Portal 2, and it's like it's got the humor of the Portal games and everything like that, and it anyone with a ridiculously huge number of words description for this PhD or whatever, for anyone who has this is going to be very easy. And the first instruction is press this button. Okay, you press that. Second button is find this very, very detailed part, but not if it's too hot, but if it's too cold, get this part instead. But if it's between these 2 degrees Kelvin, it's like just goes on this like random however many instructions to find this one part. And it's like, please take your time. You have 30 seconds. It's like, yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So unfortunately, this one, for whatever reason, when I was playing it, kept on crashing. I haven't. This is the first time I'd ever recorded VR, so I don't know if it's just something was getting mixed up with my system, but that one kept on crashing, so we weren't able to go through the entire sketch. But I have seen it happen before and everything. Like, it gets kind of crazy. But yeah, that's another thing that just another thing you can do in VR. But all that to say, those are the experiences. They do actually have games in this. There are a couple of games in it.
Yes.
To get back to the part-time gamers. Now, granted, these are not going to be. These are mini games. They're still fun to play. Like just going in and just having fun with some of these things. They're basically like imagine mobile game levels of entertainment with these games, which take that for what you will. They are entertaining for what they are. One of them is Slingshot, which imagine, like, it was described in the wiki as like a VR version of Angry Birds, kind of. So you're launching these personality cores into a warehouse to try to destroy a bunch of boxes and stuff like that in this warehouse. You're just trying to get as many points as you can get, and it's entertaining because the cores themselves, they're personality cores, so they talk to you before you fire them off into the warehouse, and they have, of course, different personalities. They have different voices too, which I'm pretty sure one of them is Morty from Rick and Morty. Sounds very similar to him. Oh, but yeah, it's just a fun little time killer. Just like try to figure out the aim in 3D. And one thing that's kind of cool is it'll show you in 3D where the core was in the last shot to give you kind of a reference. Like, okay, that shot was a little bit to the right, so I put it back to where it was before, and then just move it a little to the left and go from there. So again, cool little time killer. Probably one of my favorites these is Longbow, which is basically like it's basically a horde shooter. I guess kind of. But you're on this platform trying to protect your castle door from the Aperture Science blocky stick figure guys coming at it, and you're armed with a bow and arrows. And it's actually, I find it actually pretty cool being able to fire a bow in 3D. It's actually very satisfying. And that's like being able to get through the different waves and everything. Like, I've only gone through one wave. You can go through more. You can and they get progressively more difficult. Like, they start carrying shields, wearing helmets and stuff like that. So trying to take them out I find it to be really fun. Again, it's like, I compare these to like mobile phone levels of entertainment. But
no, what I agree. What I liked about it is, and I think the perfect way, they probably advertise it this way, but I mean, they should throw you a couple of nickels, because it does showcase, even in small points, what VR is capable of from one end to another. And it definitely checks the boxes for us as far as part-time gamers, because a lot of this stuff is very portioned to where it's like, okay, you can do this and then you can do that and do this. And even as long as I've had my Oculus, like, I never knew about this. So I plugged this thing in, and so I know people who I bought one of these for, and they were like, this is awesome. And then I forgot that their motion sickness is insane. They can get a nosebleed going up the third floor of an escalator. And in about 10 minutes, it was like, I don't feel so good. And I'm like, yeah, that was $300 well spent. Good job, me. But having said that, I finally picked this thing up and played it here and there. But this game I had never touched up until this point. So with the Longbow, that was kind of fun, but it reminded me of those who know out there. There was a show back in the 60s at BBC or England, well, same thing, called The Prisoner, where it had that weird village with the weird colors, and it just felt like this odd surrealist, and you're just waiting for like a koala to gas you. So I liked the gameplay, but the whole time I'm like, do I wear a patch with the number on it? And like, I get these riddles, like, what's happening? The medical stuff, I think it's really cool about the intricacies, but I would put even money on the fact that they called up David Cronenberg for like body horror tips. Like, there's no gore, but you have what they show, what's displayed. It's very intricate as far as like details within the human body. And you look at this stuff and you're like, oh man, they called up Cronenberg and they were like, how do we do? And that crazy old Canadian was like, I'll show you. So it's not disturbing in like a true disturbing sense. Like, they're not like ripping arms out of sockets or anything like that. That's safe for the Care Bear VR game. But having said that, I'd buy that game in a heartbeat, by the way. Yeah, could you imagine that? Care Bears and then soundtrack by like Disturbed? That'd be amazing. Yeah, some of the kids would be disturbed after playing it.
Yeah.
The robots, I wouldn't say it was boring, but it was more just that was more like showcasey. Like as
Yeah.
far as like what they can do, the robots themselves are magnificently rendered. So
Oh,
it's like every bit of it is a sum of its whole unto itself, even being kind of just these small encapsulated games. But it does, as a whole experience, kind of show you like, oh, and remember this was 2016. Obviously, they've had DLCs and upgrades and what have you. But the fact that this started, in 2016 and has lasted as long as it has, not to be confused with the game that only lasted 2 weeks from Sony. Yeah, no bonuses this year, boys. No bonuses.
Yeah.
Your recreational drug budgets are going to have to be slashed in half. I don't think anybody at Sony talks like that, but now I kind of hope they do.
Oh, I'm sure someone does.
Yeah.
But also,
and he's probably the one that's sober.
Yeah. Before we get too far, there is one more actual game in this as well that actually is another really fun one, and that I haven't seen in any other kind of context, because you can't. It's very difficult to do this kind of game in a 3D environment, and I think they did really well. I'm gonna call it Zortex, which is actually a 3D, fully VR bullet hell. So like you're controlling a little drone and you're firing against other drones that are like firing the small moving red balls towards you and everything, and you have to try to avoid that. And you have to try to kill the core and everything. It's actually like it's surprisingly difficult at times, even though you can move very quickly. It just moves however fast you move your hand, but eventually it just gets so full of fire that you're just like, yeah, I'm terrible at it, but I'm terrible at bullet hells in general. So, but it is pretty interesting seeing that VR representation of it, because like, even though you're playing as the little drone flying around, you're still present in this sphere as things are getting fired, and like you're like, sometimes it's coming towards you, and it's like all of a sudden there's a floating missile that comes like this close to your face, and you have to like try to shoot it with the drone and everything. Again, another really good representation, good thing of like what VR can do. But yeah, overall, like I said, this isn't so much about games. It's more like it's a showcase of what VR can do, which I think they all represent that pretty well. So yeah, and the other thing that's nice about it is it's free. It's basically just
free is a great price.
Yeah. You have to the caveat is you have to do it through Steam VR. So like for the Quest 2 that I have, it is actually standalone. Theoretically, I don't play it that way because literally everything I play is on Steam. So I actually recently found out you can connect wirelessly to Steam through your Wi-Fi, which is
nice.
Very helpful. Otherwise, you would have to have a physical cable connected to the computer. So yeah, with that, it has a couple, like you can't play it natively on the Quest. You have to play it through Steam VR. So you do have to go through that extra step. But honestly, it's pretty easy. So, but if this is a good place to kind of start. This is one of the reasons why I referred to this as a VR essential, because this is a really good place to start to figure out like how you can handle VR. There's, some relatively low intensity stuff. There's some more high intensity stuff. Gives you a little bit of a range, of that kind of stuff that you can experience. It gives you an idea of like where you stand when it comes to VR, and it's free. So you don't have to worry about any kind of price or anything like that. So if you're just getting a VR, I think this is a good place to start, just to get that footing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's a good time.
Yeah. And they're good time killers. Like,
And it's available after 8 years, not like a game that's no longer available after 2 weeks. Sorry, that's just too Yeah, and I think it's like Total Recall, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, it's just it really shows you sometimes how you can throw so much at a game and people still just go, eh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. But I think we've covered pretty much everything about this one. So everyone, if you like what you've heard and you'd like to help us out, you can give us a review over on Apple Podcast. You can follow my Twitch and or YouTube channels for our live recordings. Sunday nights starting at 9:15 Eastern Standard Time for our pre-show. Show starts proper about 9:30. Or you can become one of our patrons over at patreon.com/ptgcast. I need to slow down. I keep on stumbling over stuff.
Breathe.
Yeah. If you'd like to contact us, you can with our email, parttimegamers.cast@gmail.com. Or if you want something a little bit more direct, you can join our Discord channel. Everyone, thank you for listening. Please join us next week. We're going to be discussing about another kind of what I refer to as an essential. Also, it's one of the games I own. So that's a big thing as well. We're going to be talking about Space Pirate Trainer. So it's kind of it's almost like a virtual shooting gallery. It's like where you have waves of robots that you're firing at. So I'll probably do a little bit of try to record some footage for that one as well. I think it's actually a lot of fun for what it is. But we'll be talking about that next week. I'm Sean. You can find this show and the rest of my works and links to my socials, including the Discord channel and my Twitch and YouTube channels and the Apple Podcast listing using the link bit.ly/CI Productions. That'll take you to my website. There's all the links to my socials and everything in the top right-hand corner. You can find Ember's work over at 9of12.com, NINEOF12.com. Go ahead and send her a happy birthday if you haven't already.
Yeah, make it really loud on like a voicemail. Since she's over celebrated.
Yeah.
And underhydrated.
yeah, that is also probably not inaccurate. All right. Theo, where can people find you around the internet?
Farmersonly.com.
I'm assuming you have a garden or something in your front window or something to qualify?
Yeah, but don't tell the cops.
Okay.
This is Phil, last name Simon. Anyway, you can find me at rabbitandredradio.com. The network as well. There's other shows and stuff on there. Me and my podcasting cohort, as I lovingly call Producer Mike. I have to say that every time, and we might have to turn that into a drinking game. It feels contractual. Yeah. Like I did it last night like 27 times, and I didn't get sick of it, but I'm pretty sure somebody was like, 1 star, don't recommend because he's always Producer Mike. We've started up again. We're getting going with that. Now that I have something of a life again, and I think things are getting normal. I feel like I say that too loud and an anvil's gonna fall out of the sky. I will be getting back to a solo podcast. I don't know the title yet, so I can't give it to you. But it's all baby steps with that. But Rabbit and Red is back, and that we're actually going to be doing weekly now. It's going to be every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Cool. Awesome. Yep. I closed the document for whatever reason. You'd think I would know my own outro, but I am a terrible person.
And yet...
This is why I write things down, because I forget almost immediately. Anyways, until next time, we are the Part-Time Gamers, clocking out.